Hey guys, what's up? So I want to give you a little bit of background, maybe a little bit of insight. You know, Evan, why are we talking about maybe God? Why are we trying to make this fun? And I want to give you a little bit of my own background when I was in college, and this is going to be a really, really interesting story. Okay, so when I went to college, it wasn't like a normal kind of admissions into college. I actually got into college uh, through a scholarship. Yeah, you can believe that. I actually got admitted into college via a scholarship, and the scholarship that I got offered was called Recovery and Community Scholarship. Right? It's pretty simple. Um, when I went to rehabilitation, the rehabilitation was attached to the university, Texas Tech, and Texas Tech said, "Hey, we have built a institute called the Center for the Study of Addiction and Recovery. You can go look it up. I'm not going to say if it's good, it's bad. Just go look it up. Anyways, the university spent like, let's say, like $1 million to build this research institution, um, which basically primarily does research into addiction and also does it into how addiction affects communities and families. And they also do uh, research into rehabilitation. So when I got my scholarship, they said, "Hey, or when I went to rehab, excuse me, I got my scholarship." And when I got my scholarship, I'm so sorry. When I went to rehab, right, they told us we could go to the university. We get admitted to the university, and we can get admitted to the university based upon sobriety time, based upon activities that you've done in the recovery community, talking in the meetings, talking with other people. Um, that are struggling with addiction, and based upon that, you can fill out a scholarship application and you can be admitted into the university, right? So that's what I did. I went to rehabilitation, I filled out the scholarship application, and then I got admitted into the university. And I was like, all right. And what I want to kind of express was, when you go to college, you're naive, right? The trust of the university, the trust of the professors, the trust of their research, what they're doing, what they're building in your town. I was like, wow, this is great. I'm getting a 4 year university degree. Um, I was studying to get a degree in psychology. I try to maybe get a counseling degree, clinical psychology degree, and that was kind of the plan. But I thought to myself when I got to the research university or the institute, I'm like, something's kind of strange here. Something's kind of really, really, really strange that's going on here. It was the way they were teaching and their curriculum and their degree plan was actually really odd. And I want to start with a degree plan, right? So, like I said, I was getting a degree in psychology, right, which covers the study of the human mind, right, and it also covers parts of the human body, um, and then parts of the brain, obviously, right. The mind lies in the brain. The brain is part of the human body, central nervous system, human anatomy. So we know that psychology is a real field of study, and it has a large uh, magnitude of knowledge, right? So the amount of knowledge in psychology is so large that the degree of knowledge actually separates itself from, let's say, a medical scientist, medical doctor, um, other parts of, the study of anatomy or biology. It separates. It's so large, it has to separate itself, right? So we call this entire field psychology. And what universities can do is offer you a degree in that, right? So you don't get a degree in human anatomy or physiology or biology or chemistry, you get a degree in psychology, right? So just keep that in your mind. Now, in psychology, just like human anatomy, we have something called disorders, which I'm sure everybody's heard of. Um, mental health disorders, psychological disorders, psychiatric disorders. Um, Now, there are hundreds of disorders, probably thousands, um, depending on a lot of factors. But there's a lot. There's a lot. You have to study disorders. You have to study mental health. You have to study counseling, therapy, all sorts of things. Parts of the human um, brain. I mean, you have to study parts of the human mind and cognition. Anyways, there's a lot of disorders. Now, when I got my scholarship to go to the university, they had created a degree. They had created a degree specifically to deal with, what we refer to as kind of the war on drugs, and addiction, right? People who suffer from substance abuse, substance use disorder, substance abuse disorder, marijuana use disorder, all sorts of, addiction cluster disorders, right? So when you flip open a mental health or diagnostic book, you can flip there and there's the addiction disorder chapter or categories, right? And you have, there's kind of a laundry list of addiction disorders. Now, like I said, psychology is so large, right? It encompasses so many things. It separates its philosophy from other scientific studies. Now, to go back to this idea with this degree that somebody has created, what we refer to as the one disorder degree, right? The degree, once you go on the Texas Tech website, you can find it. It is called the Community, Family, and Addiction Studies degree. Now, like I said, when you're, 18, 19, 25, whenever you're getting your undergraduate, your master's degree, or your graduate degree, or even your PhD, when you're looking into, what you want to study, you're kind of naive. A lot of people are naive. I don't know enough information about how degree plans work. How industry works. Is this going to be a good degree that I get? I don't know. A lot of people, I don't know. But there's obviously some counselor there to help you out. Anyways, get away from somebody trying to help you out. What they have done was that they created a degree, what I refer to as the kind of one disorder degree, right? You have a degree, a community, family, and addiction studies degree in one disorder. Now, a clinical psychologist has to know upwards of hundreds of degrees, or hundreds of disorders. Hundreds. Okay? There's a lot of disorders out there in the psychiatric field, in the clinical psychology field. There's a lot. You have a degree in one disorder. So once you go on the Texas Tech's website and you see the Community, Family, and Addiction Studies degree. Now, the interesting thing is, once you apply for that degree, you realize that you're not getting a degree in psychology. You are simply getting an addiction studies degree. So all that means is that you are studying just addiction. Just where addiction lies in the brain, the chemical components, how, operates in the body, in the central nervous system, in the liver, all that. Just in that degree. Just in that disorder. Okay? Now, anybody who works in the mental health field will tell you almost immediately that if people are suffering from addiction, 9 times out of 10, 99.9% of the time, they have comorbidity, meaning they suffer from more than one disorder, right? I have addiction, I have depression, I have anxiety, I have, other processes, mental health processes. I may have trauma. I may have bipolarism, schizophrenia, major and minor disorders, all sorts of all sorts of disorders that come into play. And you have to know how these disorders work with one another. One triggers one exacerbates another, one lessens a symptom, one hides a symptom. So you have to know a lot when, counseling somebody in that sort of setting. So to have a degree in one disorder seems kind of frivolous, right? So if you go to rehabilitation, and this is like a quick idea, I want you to just imagine a patient walking into rehab and thinking the only thing they have going on with them is marijuana use. I'm guessing if we ask them a set series of questions, something else is going to come up. Another mental health problem, maybe not even a disorder, but symptoms that they are having with their mental health is coming up. So I started to ask myself, why is it that you have created a degree? Why has the university done this? Well, we know the natural answer. You're not getting, the director's job at the medical plaza. You're not getting, the clinical director's job in the rehabilitation. You're not getting, because now they're telling you have to go back to school to get more education. So I spent, $40,000 on my bachelor's. Read me up for another $20,000 for my master's. And now I have my boss telling me I need to go back to school to get a PhD or to get another master's degree when I should originally had just gotten, a regular clinical psychology degree. Right? So you have created a degree that has actually suppressed me from either rising in industry or basically just being successful at all. So there's a natural corruption idea. Get this degree, this person can't, move into another position. Right? They're hogtied. They have to stay there. This is corruption. This is corruptive behavior. Right? You should not have created a degree that actually lessens an individual's ability and gives them no real applicable skill set in a counseling session. Right? So this is a little bit about my background. The other thing about the institution, and this is kind of the more religious side of something. Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, self-help groups that primarily deal with religious basis, right? One God or a structure of God or an idea of God in some sort of written text, right? So what they wanted to do in this community, family, and addiction studies degree, and inside their disorder or inside their institution, which you can go, you can look at it, you can go to their website, you can go on Google Maps, they have pictures there, is they have promoted AA, which is a religious text, right? It incorporates the language of God. And what they have done, they have massively promoted. So if you walk into that building, you will see 2 large tablets, look like the Ark of the Covenant, 2 large tablets that had the 12 steps of AA. Now, remind you, this is a state university, which means your tax dollars went to build this. Okay? Not everybody worships God. Not everybody, for damn sure, does not worship one God. A lot of people, maybe, the Hinduism community, really want to speak. The Buddhist community, hey, this is America. Okay? There should have been an illegal idea in this idea that your promotion of this inside of a research institution is corruption. This is corruptive behavior. You didn't ask me anything. You just simply went out and promoted a religious idea without somebody's consent, without proper communication, proper assembly, and you went out and you promoted it, you communicated it, and you brought it into the university and the institution during business hours. This isn't like, we booked a space for, our study of the Bible or anything. No. This is during business hours. This is during research hours. This is during, education hours. When operations are happening at the university, this is being promoted on a routine basis. Prayer, worship, all of that. So this is what I found out when I started to get kind of irritated at this idea. And I, at the time, I'm not a religious person. I wasn't like deeply into, God. But I started wanting to, let's fight back at this. I mean, I'm a mental health patient. I was, a person that, needed help. And now I feel that, the trust of the university is being broken. And a shallow idea is being presented to me. And now I'm feeling this idea that, well, maybe we should stop this. Just like you built it, we can deconstruct it. Non-violently, with just simple, asking questions like, why is this here? Like, You didn't ask me my religious beliefs. You didn't ask me my religious background, or if I am religious. You just went out and promoted it. And I'm sure there's a lot of stories out there with people that are, you know, have been, misled in religion. But this is that kind of calling into God, like, why am I studying something so badly? Because I mean, hundreds and hundreds of people. I mean, it's a major 4-year university, or just being pumped in there, and almost submissively just going, okay, well, I got to get my degree somehow. I gotta do what they say. And I'm like, and this is an image of God. Like, this is like, so I'm starting to have all these questions, all these feelings where I'm just like, this is abusive. This is like, this cannot possibly be, you know, what's going to keep you sober, or what's going to keep you mentally, like, this is just abusive. So I kind of wanted to bring this up, and I was going to talk about this a little bit more, but I wanted to give you some of my background, like why I'm kind of coming into this calling, and how abusive something is. So yeah, thanks for listening.